Okay, Pirkei Avos, chapter 3, Mishnah 16 in the most conservative count. As you can see, this is a very short one. And the preface here is this feels different to me than the other mishnayos we've done. I think part of the challenge is going to be to put those feelings into words and then to ask ourselves like, is there any significance to the fact that this feels so different? Okay, so we'll do you can see that the two versions of this are pretty much the same. Rabbi Yishmael Omer, we're going to do the standard one first. Hevi kal l'rosh v'noach l'tishchores v'hevi mekabel es kol ha'adam b'simcha. Okay, I'm going to translate this one because they've got weird words here. Okay, so hevi kal l'rosh. Okay, be kal. Okay, so kal literally means light. Okay, but what we're going to do is obviously we have to define that, and we're going to mess around with different English words and try to figure out what the best English word is. So be light to the head. Okay, now this is not like lightheaded, like kalus rosh. This is like a person who is a head, okay, or to a let's say a head or a leader. Okay, v'noach l'tishchores, and be noach. Anyone want to guess what noach means?
Pleasant.
Oh. Okay, pleasant is one translation. Yeah. Okay, that's a possible translation. We'll have to see other meanings. Okay, let's leave it at that for now. Tishchores, there's a machlokas and its opposites. Okay, so it's not opposites. One side says that tishchores means a youth. Okay, and if you had to interpret this word etymologically to mean youth, where would you see that this might mean youth? Yeah, Tamar?
Maybe like black hair.
Yeah, so black hair, shachor, right? Okay. Another interpretation I saw, I think Rav Hirsch says this, is that like shachar means like the morning. So if you're talking about someone who's like at the morning of their life. Another interpretation says that it also means leader. Okay, which we would need to explain the redundancy. And receive every person with joy. Okay, the Kaufman manuscript is essentially the same. Rabbi Yishmael Omer heavy kal rosh. That's weird. It doesn't say kal la rosh. That's a little strange because no one says it means kal rosh. V'noach tishchores. Okay, I guess we're getting rid of all the lameds. Heavy makaba es kol adam b'simcha. Okay, we're just going to ignore that for now. Okay, so the questions, a lot of them are straightforward. Okay, so what is the meaning of kal in this context? What is the meaning of noach in this context? All right, what else? Yeah, Tor?
I guess what kind of leader, if it is being specific?
What kind of rosh? Oops, sorry about that. What kind of rosh are we talking about here? Okay, Vanessa?
This is going to depend on our definitions, but if we're going with pleasant, why do we need to tell a chassid to be pleasant? Isn't that
okay? You know, let's expand this to all three clauses. Okay, so if we're talking to someone who is a chassid in training, why do we need to tell him each of these things, right? Like, for example, wouldn't he automatically be pleasant? Yeah. Tamar?
I guess also what is the relationship between the sort of like the first two and the last one? The last one kind of sounds like a generalization, but I don't know how they're exactly related.
What is the relationship between the first two clauses and which are specific, and the last one, which is general? Yeah, Ayala.
I don't know what type of question, but this, like, because it says leader, like because it's specifically to someone, it seems like more of like a Mishlei idea of like you want to be nice or kind to a leader or whatever to a leader, so that way you can benefit most. Okay. So how's this for the chassid? Okay, yeah. So I'm gonna lump that under a major question under an umbrella question as well. What kind of Pirkei Avos idea
idea is this? It feels more Mishlaic. Okay. Yeah. And I'll add on to that what I said before is, what do we learn from the inclusion of such an idea in Avos? Yeah, Lauren.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I'm just like kind of interested why it's singling out like a leader and also I guess a tishkoris, like a youth, I guess.
Yeah.
If it's someone different, and why specifically those people that he's talking about.
Okay. Why single
is there some
out
relationship between the two of them?
the Rosh and the Tishchores? Okay, this is kind of like, okay, especially I'm gonna make this kind of like the inverse of question 6, especially given how general the third clause is. Yeah, Vanessa.
I'm wondering if this is just a general Pirkei Avos question, but I feel like I'm not so well learned to say this for certainty. I think the Vehave Mekabel et Kol Adam blank,
Yeah.
we see that often in Pirkei Avos. I'm wondering if that's just like a general thematic thing we
Okay.
learn.
So there is a question that we're going to examine as well. Anyone know there's one more there's another mishnah in Pirkei Avos that has a phrase that's like that with very similar advice. Anyone know what it is? Yeah, you know?
Is it Aaron? Like, was it the one?
There's definitely
Rodev Shalom, Beohev Shalom, Ekabel to.
Oh,
Oh wait,
okay,
no,
actually,
it's I just read it.
Oops.
It's
I
not,
haven't to
is it Shammai who says
Yes,
repeat
it's Shammai.
everyone
Okay,
who
good,
comes
good.
in
Yeah.
Yes, I got it. I was like, I just
Excellent.
read this over Shammai.
Okay, very good. So Shammai Omer Asay Torah Keva Emor Ma'ad V'Asay Harbe Vehevi Makaba Es Kol Adam B'Sefer Panim Yafos. So receive every person with literally like a pleasant disposition. Okay, so the Mefarshim address that because of the similarity. Okay, so the question is, I'm going to just make that, I think that's the only other phrase that's like that similar there. So the question is, how does this differ from Shammai's advice of the Heve Makabel? What do you say? I'm just going to copy and paste. The heavy makabel kol adam b'sefer panim yafos. Greet everyone cheerfully or like pleasantly. Yeah, Alex.
The question is should we be assuming that the Rosh and the Tishchores are a part of a hierarchy together, or are they leaders of like different contexts?
Okay, so let's say, let's add in the question here of what is a Tishchores in this, not working today, in this context. Okay, and then what is the relationship between the Rosh and the Tishchores? Okay, are they in the same hierarchy, right? So like if this is talking about age, so then is it like an old person, a young person? If it's talking about like social prominence, then are we talking about someone who's high up or someone who's low? Yeah. I just want to add to this question, or alternatively, what is the Hava Amina for each clause? Okay, that means, i.e., why would we think why would we have thought the opposite? Yeah. Okay. Anyone want to take a stab at any of these questions? I feel like when I did this with my Charusa, we were like, we just need to go to the Mefarshim because it seems to be, we need some guidance here. But if anyone has anything to say, then I'll hear it. Yeah, Vanessa?
I'm wondering if the difference between this pasuk and the Shammai pasuk is that with the Shammai answer, it was more like putting on a pleasant face and like focusing on the externalities and like how other people are receiving you. And for this, it's more of like, and this might like extend to the rest of the pasuk. We might learn that, but like, and this one is more about like inner joy and inner like.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I mean, this one does use a inner word of simcha, and the other one uses the external word of face. So that's a good read. I would accept that. Okay, so let's do this. Okay, we're going to start with the Rambam, and then we're going to do the Meiri without defining the Rambam because there's a bit of an overlap, and I personally am not sure whether it's the same idea or a completely different idea. Okay, so let's do the Rambam, and what I'm going to do because Vanessa had this suggestion, I forgot. Vanessa prompted me to try to do this. I'm going to summarize in bullet points after each one, just so we can have it on the screen here. Okay, since I'm not translating the whole thing. Okay, so he says kalus he hazrizus. Okay, so kal equals anyone have a go-to translation for zrizus? That's a hard one to translate. I know people like saying zealous, but zealous to me is like a religious zealot, and that's not really yeah, Tamar?
I'm actually not sure this is correct, but I think of it as like hasty, but with a positive connotation.
Okay, yeah. It does have, yeah. I see where you're getting that from. Yeah, I think that is more of a symptom than a definition. Yeah, Ayala?
Maybe like efficient.
Okay,
Like
efficient is
efficient.
closer. It does though have an attitudinal type implication as well. Yeah, Lauren?
I might be confusing definitions, but fastidiousness or
okay, no, it is used as fastidious in some cases, like having attention to detail. So in
or
this
like alacrity. I don't know why.
alacrity, yeah, okay.
Alacrity.
I think alacrity is my favorite, but the only problem is people don't use the word alacrity in everyday conversation. So alacrity, or I think the more common, let's say this: eager attentiveness. Okay, so you're eager, you're attentive. Maybe you can say efficient. Okay, as well. All right. So better, more important to get a sense than to pin it down to one word. Okay. And then Noach, the Rambam says, does not mean pleasant, but it means hanachas v'hayishuv. Okay. Deliberateness and patience. Okay. Yeah, Tamar?
This might not be a question that we can answer, but this seems like a very far word from anything that has to do with lightness for a call.
Okay. So the you'll see what he says when he explains, and then maybe we'll get a different definition. So he says, when you are with someone who is of a high stature, okay, great in stature, sim atmecha kal lenegdo, make yourself kal vis-a-vis him, v'amud lefanav l'shamsho kasher yirtze, and ready yourself to serve him however he wants. Umasur atmechalo, and give yourself over to him. Okay, so I would say that maybe another word in this context, I would say yielding or subservient almost. Okay. So that's what it means by call, that you are not holding on to any of your own priorities. You're just totally giving over your priorities to doing what this person wants. Okay, I don't know if that answers your question, but it addresses your question. Ukeshatiye im shachor haseyar, when you're with a black-haired person, okay, which means someone who's someone who's young in years. Lo tasekin, do not do this. Now here we have, remember, the Rambam wrote the Pirkei mishnayos in Arabic, so we have two different Hebrew translations. I've been using the one from Shelat. So he says, Hoker nafshecha imo. Literally, I think that means make your soul spare, be sparing with your soul with him. V'lo tinhog kalus, and don't behave in a frivolous way. V'lo tishtashea, and don't be I don't know, messing around or silly. I don't know exactly how to translate it. So that's how he says it. Chafek says a different one thing, which I think is more consistent with the Rambam. Ella heye ritzini imo, you should be serious with him. Val tinhog bakalus, and do not be frivolous or casual. Uva pashtus yasera, and with or exceedingly simple. Okay, a little difficult to get what he means here. Okay, so let's summarize this. Okay, with a prominent person, be totally yielding to do whatever they want. Okay, and then with a young person, don't be like that. Rather, what did you say? Yeah, so be serious, yeah, serious and not frivolous. Okay, it's funny that he says not frivolous because he didn't say be, unless he means by kalos. Maybe he means kalos. Yeah, sorry. I think he means kalos the way he meant from the first part, because it's the opposite, and not yielding. Okay, so that's what he says there. Okay, but then he throws in the third clause. Afterwards, it says, do not think that when he warns about like being too like light with the young person, don't think based on the aforementioned advice that you should be angry or like rough with the youth. Okay. Ella roisha takabel bnei adam kulam katanim ugdolam ben hachorin mehen v'ha'eved kol ish mimin ha'adam. Rather, you should be with everyone, young, small and great, free or slave, every member of the human species. B'simcha u'v'tuv levav. Rather, you should behave with every single human being. You should relate to every single human being with joy and gladness. Okay. And this is more than Shammai's statement about a pleasant disposition. Okay. Okay. So that is the Rambam. Okay. Any questions on this right now? Because we're going to read the Meiri, and the Meiri is going to be similar but slight differences, and some of your questions might be answered by that. Yeah, Lauren.
I'm just confused by like the explanation of Noach, and then how he explains that with the learning to relating to the young person, because it says Nachat and Yishuv, and I would think like Yishuv, like you said before, patience, but Nachat, I guess I'm just, because you said that means deliberate. I always think about like Nachas, like pride, or I don't know. I don't.
So there's two Nachas.
Definition.
Yeah, hold on a second here. There's one of the footnotes in the Toras Chaim explains this. Let's see here. Where's the Rambam say Nachas? Pashtus. Wait a minute. You said it earlier? Oh yeah. See, all right. Regius v'hamatinus, klomar loba mashmas haragila shel Noach shehi makbila lakal ukarashi. So not Noach in a way that relates to call like Rashi. After thought and analysis, and not quickly. Not quickly. So I think it comes from the word of like resting, like you should rest and not be like. So it's not. I don't know enough Hebrew to say it's from Noach, not from Nacha, maybe, or the other way around.
Like Manucha.
Yeah, like Manucha. Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, like calm maybe.
Okay, I guess how so I guess how does that relate to like, because the way he explains how to relate to young person means like to be more serious. Not, I don't know. I guess I'm confused.
Level-headed maybe is a good one that has level-headed. Acting with I'm trying to think of words that combine seriousness with like not leaping into action. You know, like that's what you get from call. Is like call means you should like leap into action, and Noach is like, no, don't leap into action. Be deliberate. You know.
Okay, I get it now. Thanks.
Yeah, I think it's easier if we get just by like a scattershot approach of like a description for each one, and then we get like the idea in our minds. Okay, so hold on to these ideas. Now we're gonna do the Meiri. Now the Meiri is going to give two readings of Noach letishchores, which is going to result also in a different meaning of Yikabel Pana B'Simcha. Okay, it's going to start off very similar to the Rambam. Rabbi Yishmael Omer Hevi Kal LaRosh Rotel Omer Shetase Atmucha Kal Kitzvi LaAvodas HaNichbadim LaOvdam Bezrizus Ukderech Shemishu Kal Be'inav Be'erech LaOso Nichbad. So he says you should make yourself light like a deer, for the deer like an animal, not like be a deer and fetch me the water, but so in service of the revered people, to serve them with alacrity and in the manner of someone who doesn't take himself so seriously vis-a-vis that revered person. Okay. Don't serve him in a manner of like asserting your own authority. Okay, so slight differences here. Okay, so he's saying call means serve with alacrity in a manner that doesn't take yourself seriously vis-a-vis this honored person and doesn't assert your own authority. Okay, so that's like that's his sense. Okay, then Noach L'Tishchoros, his first interpretation is humi min ze. This is the same type of thing. L'Tishchoros gedola or gedula. So he says it's a synonym. V'amar shehei Noach b'chol inyan etzel hagadol v'lo yizgai aleim b'masau v'matano. And it's saying that you should be Noach with a gadol, with someone who's great, and not be haughty in your dealings with them. The af Chachmei HaMusar Amru, the Chachmei HaMusar, okay, I don't know which Chachmei HaMusar this is. I looked up in the footnote and quoted some book called The Chachmei and the Musar or something. Vamrun, they said, he's Gadol Hagdolim Sakana. Making yourself great in the presence of great people is dangerous. Okay, so he's saying Noach L'Tishchores equals, I'm saying this is Kol LaRoche. Let's do this again. Kol LaRoche. Okay, so Noach L'Tishchoros means when interacting with a prominent person, don't act haughtily because that's dangerous. Okay, then the third part is V'hevi Makabel V'amar Achar Kach V'hevi Makabel is called B'simcha. Klomer Shashar B'nei Adam Alpha Pisha Einachat Tzarech Etzlam Le'elu HaMadregos. Other people, even though you don't need to deal with them with these like go to these links or deal with these policies. Okay, so he says with regular people, even though you don't need to go as far with them as you do with the above, you should still greet them joyfully, like Shammai says. Okay, so unlike the Rambam, who says that Shammai is a lower level than this, and this is a higher level, Meiri equates them. Okay, so this is Meiri explanation number 1. Okay, this is explanation number 1. Now he's going to give a different explanation. So this one is somewhat similar to the Rambam. Okay, but now he gives a different explanation. Explanation number 2. What does he say? So he says like this. So the first part is the same. Okay, so the first part is going to be Kol LaRoche. That one is he sticks with the same thing. Okay, next he says some say it's the opposite of Kol LaRoche. Upirusho tishchores lashon bacharus milashon hayaldus v'hashacharus. Okay, so there's a phrase in Koheles that says the yaldus, which is the youth, and the shacharus. And the funny part is that some people want to say that shacharus is the opposite of yaldus, but some people say it's similar, and they both bring proofs from the same pasuk. Ukidivrei Rabbeinu Darim lamed amud beis hanoder mishchorei rosh asur af bekarachim uvabali sevos. So it says someone who makes a neder to not get a benefit from people who have black hair. It's also usher to the neder is also binding regarding someone who's balding or someone who is has white hair. Okay, fine. So it's just using a proof that shachor means like black hair. V'kavana, the intent is shelo yahadit atzmo. Anyone know what a hedyot is? Hedyot comes from I think a Greek word. Yeah, Ayala?
Is it like Cohen hedyot, like regular?
Yeah, regular. It means a regular person. Okay, so hedyot comes from regular. I think it is related to the Greek word idiotes, like hedyot, which means like an idiot, but not like an insult, like dumb idiot, but like just your average idiot. So this is the first time I've ever seen this used as a verb. Shelo yahadit atmo, don't make yourself like a regular person. La avodas hapechusim, in service of like lower people or degenerates, v'hayaladim, and young people. Okay, so he's saying like this: Noach letishchores means the opposite of kol larosh. Okay, so with the rosh, you should like leap into serving them however you want. But with a young person, you don't make yourself like a regular person in service of the lowly and the young. Okay. And he says, Aval kishit starhulo shelo yehe mizdamin kol kach b'kalos of idiotis. Okay. So he says, rather, when they need you, then you should avoid, wait, what did he say? When they need you, don't make yourself so available to them, but with ease, and like someone who's just like a commoner. Ella b'derech nacha achar haheftzeri. You should only like make yourself available to them after like patience and pressure. Adam gadol hamizdamen lakatan mimeno bechvedus uvenachas, like someone who is like a prominent person only makes himself available to a lesser person with great pressure and after like a lot of time. Like it says in Bava Metzia, misarvin lakatan ve'emisarvin lagado. You should refuse to serve a lower person, but don't refuse to serve a higher person. Okay, so he's saying like this. Rather, when they need you, you should avoid like giving into them until after they pressure you. The pressure like until. Unless there's been, okay, unless, I'm trying to think how to word this in English, giving in and helping them, unless, yeah, you are patient and they pressure you, okay? But then hold your thought, because he then qualifies it. He says, and he warns afterwards that nevertheless, yikabel panav b'simcha, you should receive him with joy. You should not relate to him in an angry or haughty manner. Ella shisarev b'devarim metukim. You should refuse him with sweet words. Kamo shemarelo shekavar haya netarlo ella shesibos ma'akvos alav. You should like appear to him as though you really want to help, but there are things that prevent you from doing so. Okay. And all the more so if he does succeed in pressuring you, you should make yourself appear to him as though you are being entreated joyfully and with a good heart. Okay, so I'm going to summarize that here, which is, but don't act angrily or haughtily towards him. Rather, refuse him with sweet words, as if you really want to help, but there are things which prevent you. Okay. And if he does pressure you into helping, then certainly do so joyously and not reluctantly. Okay. Now, just because this is very practical, I want to show you 3 examples of this, okay, that are fairly recent well, okay, they're not fairly recent. Okay, first example is I was listening to a Tim Ferriss episode where he interviews Danny Meyer, who is the founder of Shake Shack, a big restaurant chain. So Tim Ferriss wrote this book called Tribe of Mentors, which is basically like the book version of his podcast, where he sent out 11 questions to a bunch of like famous people who are really good in their field, and they wrote their answers and he compiled them all into a book. Okay. So one of the questions ironically was, what have you gotten better at saying no to? Okay. And how have you done it? So several of these like prominent people said no to his email. Okay. And like refused to participate. And Tim said that some of these refusals were so good that he included them in the book as like model ways to say no. Okay, so what I'm about to read is an email from this Danny Meyer guy to Tim Ferriss's assistant, Jeffrey, who was like asking on behalf of Tim Ferriss to like participate in the book. So Danny says, Jeffrey, greetings and thanks for writing. I'm grateful for the invitation to participate in Tim's next book project, but I'm struggling at this moment to make time ends meet for all we're doing at USHG, including my ongoing procrastination with my own writing projects. I thought carefully about this, and it's clearly a wonderful opportunity, but I'm going to decline with gratitude. Know that the book will be a big success. Thanks again, Danny. Okay, so that was a very nice refusal. It's a little self-deprecating. He makes it clear that he wants to help, etc. Okay. The second example is from the Rambam, and I've read this. I try to find excuses to read this to my students because I think it's such a great letter. I can tell you remember this one. No, okay. So Shmuel ibn Tibon, who was one of the Rambam's translators, wanted to visit the Rambam to ask him a bunch of questions, basically to learn with him, but to ask him a bunch of questions about how to translate terms in the Mor Nevuchim. Okay, now this is when the Rambam was already older and he was the physician to the Sultan in Cairo. Okay, so the Rambam writes back, and this is his response to the request to visit. And what I love about this is the Rambam goes through his daily schedule. Okay, so here's what he says. He says, now God knows that in order to write this to you, I have escaped to a secluded spot where people would not think to find me, sometimes leaning for support against the wall, sometimes lying down on account of my excessive weakness, for I have become old and feeble. But with respect to your wish to come here to me, I cannot but say how greatly your visit would delight me, for I truly long to commune with you and would anticipate our meeting with even greater joy than you. Yet I must advise you not to expose yourself to the perils of the voyage, for beyond seeing me and doing all I could to honor you, you would not derive any advantage from your visit. Do not expect to be able to confer with me on any scientific project for even 1 hour, either by day or night, for the following is my daily occupation. I dwell in Fostat, and the Sultan resides in Cairo. These two places are 2 Sabbath days' journeys, about 1.5 miles distant from each other. My duties to the Sultan are very heavy. I'm obliged to visit him every day, early in the morning, and when he or any of his children or any of the inmates of his harem are indisposed, I dare not quit Cairo, but I must stay during the greater part of the day in the palace. It also frequently happens that 1 or 2 of the royal officers fall sick, and I must attend to their healing. Hence, as a rule, I return to Cairo very early in the day, and even if nothing unusual happens, I do not return to Fostat until the afternoon. Then I am almost dying with hunger. I find the antechambers filled with people, both Jews and Gentiles, nobles and common people, judges and bailiffs, friends and foes, a mixed multitude who will wait the time of my return. I dismount from my animal, wash my hands, go forth to my patients, and entreat them to bear with me while I partake of some light refreshment, the only meal I take in 24 hours. Then I go forth to attend to my patients, write prescriptions and directions for their several ailments. Patients go in and out until nightfall, and sometimes even, I solemnly assure you, until 2 hours and more into the night. I converse with and prescribe for them while lying down from sheer fatigue, and when night falls, I'm so exhausted I can scarcely speak. In consequence of this, no Israelite can have any private interview with me except on the Sabbath. On that day, the whole congregation, or at least the majority of the members, come unto me after the morning service when I instruct them as to the proceedings during the whole week. We study together a little until noon when they depart. Some of them return and read with me after the afternoon service until evening prayers. In this manner, I spend the day. I have here related to you only a part of what you would see if you were to visit me. Now, when you have completed for our brethren the translation you have commenced, I beg that you will come to me, but not with the hope of deriving any advantage from your visit as regards your studies, for my time is, as I've shown you, so exceedingly occupied. So I feel like anyone except a huge jerk would read this from the Rambam and then still insist that, no, you got to make time to let me visit you, Like the Rambam is like saying clearly he really, really wants to do this, but it's going to be like very, very hard. And I don't really have time. Okay. Third example, I'm not going to record. Okay, so that's the Meiri's take. So now the question, Tamar.
I think this is really interesting. I'm just wondering from these examples, the element of like making yourself a hedyot. I'm not seeing exactly how that plays out. Like okay. It's wasting your time maybe to help these people.
Yeah, right.
Like, yeah.
Okay, so let's analyze both of these together. Okay, which is let's see here. You know what? I can probably paste this in the chat if you want. So summary of the Rambam. Okay, summary of the Meiri. and the summary of the Meiri explanation too. Okay, so the question is, let's go back to our questions here. Okay, so we have clear answers to the first question. So what is call? Call means yielding and willing to serve, to leap into service like a deer, and like be be eager to do what the gadol wants. Okay, Noach, both Meiri and the Rambam seem to learn that Noach means like deliberate or wait, what did the Meiri say for Noach for the? Oh no, sorry. For the first interpretation, the Meiri said Noach is don't act haughtily. Okay, but for the second one, he says it's like the Rambam. It means like don't be so quick to just leap into service. And he said don't make yourself like a hedio. Don't make yourself like a regular person in service of the Eladim and the Pchusim, the degenerates and the youth. Okay, what kind of Rosh? Seems to be talking about like any prominent person, whether it is in a given hierarchy, like let's say like at work, or whether it's like an objective thing, like like a great Talmid Chacham, or whether it's like both, like in the case I mentioned with Rav Pesach, where he's both like the Rosh Yeshiva and a great Talmid Chacham. Okay, what is a Tishchoris? So Rambam and second Meiri both say that it's a young person. What's the relationship between the Rosh and the Tishchoris? Are they in the same hierarchy? So it seems to be that we are talking about like in a kavod hierarchy, that like the Rosh is deserving of kavod and like the youth is not deserving of kavod. Okay, so it is different ends of the spectrum. If we're talking to someone who's a chassid in training, why do we need to tell them these things? So that we don't know. Or what's the hava mina for each clause? So we know the hava mina for the greet everyone with simcha, because you might think that like in light of the first two clauses, you shouldn't greet people with simcha, and he's telling you should, but we need to work that out a little bit more. Okay, why single out Rosh and Tishchoris? Okay, we don't have a clear answer to that. What's the relation between the first two clauses and the last one? And how is this different from Shammai's advice? So according to the Rambam, greeting someone with simcha is greater than sever panim yafos. According to the Meiri, it is what do you call it? It is the same. Okay. And then the real question is like, what kind of idea is this in Pirkei Avos here? Like, well, I feel like again, this is like a very Mishleic idea that you're gonna maybe get along better, or like Tamar said, it's gonna waste your time if you're like giving into all these demands. But like, I feel like what is the Pirkei Avos type idea that is relevant to either a chassid or like leaders of the community? So these are the questions that I struggle with. Okay, what do you say? And again, I don't know. Let's leave it open right now. Whether the Rambam and the Meiri, like there's clearly overlap, right? But I don't know if they're saying completely distinct ideas or what. Yeah, Lauren.
Maybe like this mishnah is getting at like a propensity of like a chassid to like, he knows that he is greater than like his peers in the greater community, and it's kind of like it could affect how he relates to others, those that are greater than him, those that are less than him. So if it's someone that's like, he should recognize his place and that there are people that are greater than him, and he should be like, really like show like tons of kavod to their Rebbe and be ready to like, help them out when they need it. And like at their side, and versus on the other side, like don't think that you're so great that like, and you are very good in Torah learning and your time is important, but at the same time, still treat people that are less than you with respect. And like, maybe like you don't have to spend your time with them, but when you respond to them in like in a way that it like still retains like their, dignity. I guess I'm thinking like in a respectful way, like not that you have to do it, but you should just treat them respectfully when saying no.
Okay, good. So I think that satisfies me in part. Okay, which is that the chassid is going to be in a prominent position in the community. And when you're in a prominent position, it's very easy to forget your place. Okay, so for example, you might relate to other people in the upper echelon without the respect that they're due, or because you hold yourself in such high esteem, then you might treat the others with like it might be like a kavod competition. In fact, I guess this is kind of relevant to the Avelos for Rabbi Akiva's students, right? I didn't plan this, but that they weren't treating each other with kavod. Right. And it was a very like, they were really focused on their own kavod. So that can happen in elite circles. I imagine that this happens sometimes in academia, Or like, my dad used to say that the most, I hope this doesn't offend anybody. My dad, who was an anesthesiologist, said that the most arrogant people in the world who he's met are surgeons, that surgeons, think that they're all that. And they walk around the operating room like everyone should just like bow to them, And I often wonder what happens when two surgeons are working together. It doesn't
even more
like
neurosurgeons.
Yeah, right. Neurosurgeons would be the highest one. Yeah. So like you could see how a chassid might need this reminder in dealing with other people on that high level. Certainly they would need the reminder in regards to someone who is on a lower level, that they need to strike that balance between being, the fact that they are a chassid might incline them to like, look, if you're like Moshe Rabbeinu, then you might err on the side, and you're very humble, you might err on the side of letting people walk all over you in service of them. And guess what? That happened to Moshe. When did that happen to Moshe in terms of him like going out of his way to serve people in a way that ended up being damaging?
When he struck the rock.
Was that in service of people? I'm saying like, when was he in service of anyone who asked him for stuff and that ended up being bad because he was just like immediately in service of anyone who asked? Yeah.
The beginning of Yisro.
Oh, Yisro. Yeah. Okay, good. Yisro, right? So Yisro goes up and says, you can't just be the judge and just like take all the cases. You're going to wear yourself out. So you need to appoint like people who are, there's a hierarchy of judges to like deal with all the other cases, So I haven't like learned that sugya, but like, it seems like I could picture someone like Moshe saying, well, look, I have the knowledge, and like, he's not like trying to get kavod for himself. He's just trying to like help everyone. And it's possible, when Tamar said that that's going to waste his time, it's possible that that's something that Pirkei Avos is going to be concerned with. Like, you can't just have the greatest people in the nation, like helping every single person who asks without taking away from the time that could be used for something better. And they have to push back. But at the same time, they can't be too standoffish or too abrupt in a way that is going to give the wrong impression to the people below them. So this is very good advice for the chassid. I wish I would like to like unify it a little bit more, but let me hear what Vanessa and Tamara have to say. Yeah, Vanessa.
First, I have a question just to see if my idea is valid. Can you like define what you mean by Mishlei idea? I have not learned Mishlei with you except like maybe once.
Okay,
Sorry.
So the way we learn Mishlei is it is a book about practical decision making using chachma to ensure good long-term benefits without long-term consequences, and to live the best life possible. So like practical decision making geared towards long-term benefits and avoiding long-term consequences.
And in that same vein, how would you define a Pirkei Avos idea? Like,
so Pirkei Avos idea is striving for the highest levels of perfection in line with the Torah values. Mishlei is not, the way we learn Mishlei is, it's not so much concerned with you living in line with the Torah values as it is with you making good decisions that will benefit you. And like, it shows you how the Torah life is going to do that, but the emphasis is more on like the average person can get benefits that they care about. Pirkei Avos is dealing with stuff that like only people on a high level care about.
Okay.
Yeah.
I need to try for a bit.
Okay. Did you? Yeah. Tamar.
So I want to take a stab at the Halamina. I'm not sure if this is going to work out, but I'm going to try.
Yeah.
So I think that a person could think potentially, I mean, I don't know if a chassid would think this, but like that someone who, if you're very great and someone is a little greater than you, like you don't really have to serve them, like that, right. Like, or maybe that it's some sort of, maybe it's like a gradient, or something like that. And it seems almost like a binary, like when someone actually is good. Greater than you, I guess. I'm not sure exactly what the definition of Rosh is. Yeah. But there's some line where when you cross it, you should like completely serve them, even though you are a great person.
Yes. Okay. That's a really good vocalizing of the intuition here. That like you might think that you conduct yourself this way in proportion to their greatness. So if it's the Gadol Hador, then you go out of your way to like be subservient to them. But if it's like someone in your I don't know, like a contemporary who's just like a couple years your senior or whatever, or like a little bit better in Chachman than you, then like, that's basically the same thing, but in reality, no, it should be a binary, and there should be this like absolute, subservience in terms of like doing what they want. Yeah. Alex, you want to add to the, that point?
I think there's also something to be said about, when you're at that higher level and there are people higher than you, you need to remember you're not like on an equal playing field just because you yourself are at a high level.
Okay, right. So that's another hava mina that not like a logical hava mina, but like an emotional pull. That it's not just like you're in the Chacham club and or the Chassid club and like once you're in, you're in. No, there are people who are higher than you and like there's a lot of room for you to grow and like you need to you need to do artificial things to maintain that division so that you can aspire to that greatness. I don't know if I'm putting words in your mouth. Is that no? Okay, all right. Yeah, that's a good idea also. Yeah, Ayala.
Okay, so I have a few questions. One is, how would this apply to like people besides Hasidim in training?
Yeah, so this would definitely apply to people, right? This seems to be relevant to everybody, that everybody should be called Laroche. And the difference between the Hasidim training and us is that there are a lot more people in that category, right, for us. And then for us, same thing with a tishchor, for the noach l'tishchoris, like if you are like a high school teacher, and like you shouldn't just let like the kids who you're working with boss you around and like do stuff like make these demands, and like you shouldn't make yourself like hedio to them. Or maybe even for a parent, a parent, you have a lot more on your side because you have kibbud avaim and mora avaim, but you shouldn't like just be at the beck and call of all of your kids, like you need to maintain that kavod. So I think it definitely applies to us even more readily than the chassid. And in terms of the same reasons also, like all the reasons that we said for why the chassid needs to be vigilant about the people who are above him definitely applies for us,
Okay, so then I guess I've heard a lot of stories or a lot of praise of Talmidei Chachamim and like rabbis who do make themselves like available to the public.
Yeah.
And even in the Rambam, he's saying that like his entire afternoon is spent like with the public, even way into the night. And like he doesn't talk about learning in there. I don't know like when he learns, but
yeah. This was late in the Rambam's life, and it seems like he did not have as much time to learn then as he did in the earlier part. And he sounds like he only learned on Shabbos, but I'm sure it's the Rambam, so I'm sure he was like learning when he could. But that's a good question. I guess
the question is like where you draw the line and what exactly does it mean here?
Right. So I'm going to give you a partial answer now. Am I? Hold on. I had a source that I wanted to bring in, but okay, we are gonna read a story later on. Let me think. I'm gonna hold off on answering that question until we read the Sforno, okay? Because he's gonna bring up an anecdote, and once we have the anecdote, we can work with that, okay? But just make sure I don't forget your question, okay? Vanessa.
I touch on it. This isn't super fleshed out. I also don't have the pasuk in my head, which is okay. I'm wondering if the first clause and the second clause are both ego positioning. For this. So I think what it's trying to do is the first half, each clause alone seems obvious, but I think putting them in conjunction with each other is what makes it thing. Because the first thing is you need to be humble, humble in a traditional sense of you need to respect your elders, you need to respect whoever's rosh atop of you, and whatever that is, it can be debated, but I think it stands generally that whatever, that's a reminder, and Hasidim need that reminder in training because they might get haughty as they get learn more learned in Torah. Yeah. And then on the other hand, I work with kids, so I always think about work whenever we're learning Pirkei Avos, kids do need boundaries, and I think there's a difference between being available and being a kind person and helping and learning and teaching and whatever, we have that value, but also just setting boundaries and being you know what, I'm not gonna just sit with you for 5 hours, I'm not gonna I'm not wording so well, I'm so sorry.
No,
I'm so brain foggy, but
boundaries,
I think they work together, and that's the Havaninas together. Humility isn't just oh, I'm nothing, I'm gonna do everything for you. Of course, a child is gonna ask me, I'm gonna sit with him and learn Torah for 24 hours with this child because he asked. It's not a lack of midot to say no.
Right. Okay, good. That's a really good way to frame it. I also wanted to work out an approach, which I couldn't work out, that the whole thing is ego moderation. I think there's I think there's two broad approaches you could take this for both the Rambam and the Meiri. One is that this is for the sake of the society, like for the sake of maintaining like this hierarchy in society for the good there. And that's why the chassid is caring about it, because it's for them. The other one is for your own midos development, which I think a lot of us have been taking here. And ego is like definitely one branch of that. Yeah, Ayala?
So talking about it in this way reminds me of the Rambam's middle path. And I feel like in order to make like good, clear decisions about when to be kal and when to be null, you really have to be in the middle path. Otherwise, like, according to my understanding of it, I guess, otherwise, like, at least in myself, I could see myself going like one way or the other way based off of like how I feel, and I feel like it's clouding my like judgment of when actually would be a smart decision to go either way.
Yeah, well, the interesting thing about the middle path, that complicates things a little bit, because the one of the exceptions is that you don't go to the middle path for humility, you go all the way to the extreme, and I feel like if this does relate to the ego, then it's hard to see how to reconcile the middle path thing with this,
Yeah, I guess that's kind of my question. Like, I feel like I would lean more. Well, actually, yeah, never mind. Yeah.
Okay, so let's do this. I want to do the Sforno, and then that's going to also bring up your question about like what about all the cases where the Chachamim do seem to like be very yielding to people who are lower than them. Yeah, Vanessa?
I'm wondering, sorry, I don't want to go on this forever. I know you want to move on, but I'm wondering if this might be about, oh, I completely lost it.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's okay. Okay, so Sforno is gonna say an approach that is very different. I personally like the Sforno the best. Okay, and I'm gonna say that now, just so I don't have to like try to pretend that I'm treating them all equal. All right, so here's what Sforno says. Oh, let me find him. Okay, heavy kal larosh. Wait, center it. Okay, Kinyan altis hadar lifnei melach. Okay, so like it says in Mishlei, do not glorify yourself in front of the king. Okay, and that's talking about an actual king. Kol shekain lifnei hamelech hakadosh. All the more so in front of the holy king, and that's God. Inyan David ba'amro unakalosi od mizos. Like David Melech said, I will make myself even lowlier than this. Now, I copied the footnote from Al Torah. Kasher David raka lifnei Aron Hashem, when David danced in front of the Aron of Hashem, Umichal and his wife he'iralo al shebiza es atzmo. So she was like kind of like chastising him for degrading himself because he was dancing in a way that was like inappropriate for a king. Va'ana David, and David responded, Unakalosi on mizos, I'll be even more degraded than this. Upirish Mahari Kra, and the Mahari Kra explains Kolomar, meaning to say, Hayali lahakel atzmi od yoser mizos. I should make even more light of myself. Okay, so that's the first clause. So in front of a regular king, so he's going to be learning Rosh as like a leader. Okay, I don't know if you would limit it to leader, but like a ruler, you should not glorify yourself in front of him, and all the more so in front of God. Okay, that's step one. Step two, Noach letishchores lifnei tz'irim liyamim, in front of the young, hevi Noach umiskabed letualtam. You should be Noach and dignified for their benefit. Okay, so I don't know how he's saying Noach, but dignified for their benefit. But what does it mean? Shelo yagisu datam bach. They shouldn't be too comfortable with you. Okay, or it's like, I think that's like what Vanessa was saying, like the boundaries thing. Okay, that they shouldn't be overly familiar with them. Kadeshi yikablu mimcha. Why? So that they will receive from you. Okay, meaning so that they will be able to learn from you. You should receive every person with joy. That you shouldn't be so like literally you shouldn't weigh upon them so much. You shouldn't be so heavy or serious with them so that they will be afraid to approach you. Meaning, don't make it so that they're afraid to approach you. You should greet them cheerfully. Okay, he uses that phrase from Shammai. Which in his commentary on that Mishnah with Shammai, he says, Lo bagava ubuz kaminag bnei harishus, not with haughtiness or scorn like politicians often do, or not politicians, rulers. Often, so you should be pleasant with them. Why? Often shetakarvim la'avodas hakel, in a way that brings them close to the service of God. Inyan shesipru al Hillel, like they talk about Hillel. Like Hillel, who wrapped himself in his garments and sat in front of the questioner and said, ask, my son, ask. We're going to read that story later on. uvamidasozos, and through this midah, hikriv gerim lachasos tachas kanvei shchina. Then Hillel brought people to convert to Judaism. Okay, there's the three stories in of where Goyim went to Shammai. I was actually reading this in another context today. So like my favorite one is a Goy came to Shammai and said, a Goy was walking by the base midrash and he heard them learning about the garments of the Kohen Gadol. So the Goy went to Shammai and said, convert me to Judaism on the condition that you make me Kohen Gadol. And Shammai like chased him out of the building with a ruler. Okay. And then he went to Hillel and said, convert me on the condition that I'll be Kohen Gadol. So Hillel said, great. So Hillel converted him, and then they learned and learned and learned. And then when they got to the pasuk about the Kohen Gadol, when they got to the pasuk that says about a king, no, it must have been about a Kohanim. Yeah, about a Kohen. Then the guy said, wait, who's this talking about? And he figured out that like, oh, I can't be a Kohen Gadol. But then he praised Hillel for saying like, you brought me to the Shekhinah. Okay, so just to summarize here. Okay, we'll read the story after, and that's going to answer Ayala's question, but I want to summarize. So Kal LaRoche, Kal LaRoche means don't glorify yourself in front of a human king, and certainly not in front of God. Okay, Noach Letishchores equals be serious and not overly familiar with younger people so that they will be more receptive to your Torah. Okay, and then the simcha thing is don't alienate people by being too, what do you say? I'll just say standoffish. Okay, but rather greet them with simcha so that you will bring them closer to Hashem. Okay, so what is the Sforno's idea in this Mishnah? I think the unified idea is much more evident than the Meiri and the Rambam. Yeah, Ayala?
It seems like it's talking about how to best bring people to Torah.
Exactly.
Ideas and Hashem.
Yeah. Okay, good. So I assume Tamara was going to say the same thing if she put her hand down. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So here's how I would say it. Okay, is that Rambam and Meiri seem to focus more on, or at least the way we're interpreting it, focus more on your own midos. But the way Sforno has it, it's a beautiful idea. Is you exist in a social hierarchy no matter what. Okay, like every society has a hierarchy. Okay, even like the communist and socialist ones who claim that everyone's equal, like and Korach also has a hierarchy. Okay, so the thing is that it's very easy to get caught up in the emotions of where you fall out on the hierarchy. Okay, and like emotionally, like just get caught up of, oh, this person's higher up than me, like, you know, and I get caught up in their aura, like their glow, or like, no, I'm higher than this person, I'm going to lord it over this person. But what the Sforno is doing is he's saying, take those emotions and harness them as vehicles for a maximum kirva lamakom, a maximum bringing closer people to God. So with the king, don't get enamored by the king. Say, if this is how I relate to the king, then kal v'chomer I should relate to God this way. Use the king as a model for the way you relate to God. And with other people, you know, you might be inclined to be all buddy with like your students, but say, no, that's going to interfere with their ability to learn from me if they're overly familiar with me. And if I don't draw clear boundaries, I have to maintain these boundaries in order, not for my own kavod, because like I deserve kavod, or because like I'm haughty or whatever, but because it's best for their learning. And when I interact with other people who are my equals or with everybody, the goal should be what interaction is going to bring them closer to God. And generally speaking, that's going to be with simcha, greeting them with simcha. Okay. So I really, really like that idea. All right. But now let's answer Ayala's question. Okay, which is, what about those cases where like you have all these cases of Chachamim who do seem to make themselves overly available to people? Okay, this is not going on the Sforno, but Sforno brought up this case of Hillel. So I want to read to you the story in the Gemara. Okay, and if you've never read this story, then you're in for a treat. Okay, it's a long story. Tanu Rabbanan, Sana Brisa. Le'olam yehe adam anvasam ki Hillel v'lo yehe kapdam kashamai. A person should always be humble like Hillel. Okay, anvasan is not exactly humble. It's like whatever, you'll see. Humble like Hillel, and not a kapdan, like a impatient, easily angered, however you want to say it, like a shamai. Okay. There was a case where there were two people. Shehimru ze. They made a bet with each other. Anyone who successfully provokes Hillel is going to get 400 zuz. Okay. We'll say $400. Okay. Amar echad mehem. So one of them said, Ani akni teno. I'm going to go provoke him. Oso hayom erev Shabbos haya. So the scene was erev Shabbos. Hillel chafaf his rosha. Hillel was washing his hair. Okay, so he's going. Hillel's in the shower washing his hair. Okay, I know they didn't have a shower. Halach va'avar al pesach beso. So the guy walked in front of Hillel's door. Amar, and he said, Mikan Hillel. Is there a Hillel here? Is there a Hillel here? And Rashi says he's saying this in a very disrespectful way, right? You don't just say like,
Where's Rabbi at?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Nisatif yatzeli kraso. So Hillel like wrapped himself like in his clothing again and like went out to greet the guy. So he like stopped washing his hair, went out to greet the guy. Amrlo, the guy said, he said to the guy, Beni, my son, ma'atam bavakesh, what would you like? What do you want? Amrlo, he said, She'ela yeshli lishol. So the guy said, I got a question. Amrlo, and Hillel said, Sha'al beni, sha'al, ask my son, ask. So here's the question. Why are the heads of Babylonians oval shaped? Okay. Amrlo, he said to him, Beni, my son, you've asked a very good question. Because they don't have clever midwives. I guess, midwives back then would like deliver the baby skillfully to like not make the head all misshapen, or they were like shaping it out again, whatever. Okay. Halach v'himtin sha'acha. So Hillel went, the guy left and waited for an hour. Chazar v'amar, then he came back and he said, Mikan Hillel. Is there a Hillel here? Is there a Hillel here? Nis'atev yatzah l'kraso. Hillel got dressed again and went out to greet him. Amrlo, and he said, B'ni, ma'atam v'akish. My son, what do you want? Amrlo, he said, She'ela yeshli lishal. I have a question to ask. Amrlo, he said, Sha'al b'ni, sha'al. Ask my son, ask. Mifnei ma inehem shel tarmodian trutos. Why are the eyes of, I don't know who these tarmodian are, why are they like squinty? Amar lo, he said to him, Beni, my son, She'el Gadol Shal, you ask a good question, because they live in a very sandy place and there's always sand going around. Okay. Halach v'himtin sha'ach, as he went and waited for an hour. Chazar v'amar, he came and said, Mikan Hill, is there a hill here? Is there a hill here? Nis'atef yatzah l'kraso, he went out and greeted him. Amar lo, B'ni, ma atam b'vakesh, Amar lo she'ela yesh lishol, Amar lo sha'al b'ni sha'al, mipnei ma raglim sha'afrikim rucho avos. Why do Africans have wide feet? Okay. Amrlo, he said, B'ni she'ela gadola shalta. My son, you asked a good question. Because they live in like water wetlands. So like I guess it helps them walk. Okay. Amrlo. So the guy said to Hillel, I got so many questions to ask you. But I'm afraid you're going to get angry. So Hillel got dressed. I mean, I know he was already dressed, and he sat down in front of him. Amrlo, he said, all the questions you have, ask. Amrlo, he said, okay, so now the guy says, Atahu Hillel shekorin oscha nasi Yisrael. Are you the Hillel who they call the Nasi of Israel, the Prince of Israel? Amrlo, he said, Hein. He said, yes. Amrlo, im atahu. So the guy said, if that's really you, lo yirbu kamoscha b'Yisrael. There should not be more people like you in Israel. Amrlo, so Hillel said, B'ni, mipnei ma, my son, why do you say that? Amrlo, he said, mipnei ibadati al yadcha arba me'ozuz, because you made me lose $400. Okay. Amrlo, so Hillel has a little zinger back. He says, Hevi zahir biruchacha, be careful with your spirit. Kadaihu Hillel shetovad al yado arba me'ozuz, v'arba me'ozuz v'Hillel yakpi. Okay, he says, be careful with your spirit. Hillel is worth it that you should lose another 400 and another 400 and Hillel will not get angry. Okay. So so the question is, Hillel's doing exactly the opposite of what the Rambam and the Meiri are saying to do, right? That the Rambam and maybe the Sforno also, but definitely the Rambam and the Meiri, that the Rambam and the Meiri say that you should not make yourself so readily available. You should refuse until they pressure you into giving in. Okay, and it sounds like Hillel on a very, very busy day is making himself totally available. So the question is, why would he do this? And then by extension, Ayala is saying, what about all these other chachamim who would make themselves available? I was listening to I wish I could remember who this was, an interview about a great Jewish educator who, just give me 1 second. It was this great thing. I'm mixing up so many podcasts that I'm listening to. I think he was having this Jewish educator who was like some prominent guy, was having this meeting with a bunch of other Jewish educators, and it was at night and at his house, and there was a knock on the door, and it was like this teenager, and the educator excused himself and went and spoke with the teenager for like 45 minutes, and then came back. And I guess this guy, I think he worked with like troubled youth or something like that. And he apologized to the people who were there and said, like, I'm sorry, but like whenever one of these kids needs me, I make myself available to them, and no matter what, and I drop everything else I'm doing, So like you hear stories like this, So the question is like, what's up with that? How do you reconcile that with the Rambam and the Meiri? Yeah, Vanessa.
I don't know how to reconcile the Rambam and Meir, but I think I just have a baby idea. I'm like, again, I think about my patients all the time.
Yeah.
I think there's a difference between making yourself available and debasing yourself. I think, like, I have kids who, like, they'll really boisterous kids who will ask me 20 million questions, and that's never a problem. And then there are certain kids who, like, they're doing it in a different way. They're doing it, like, not because they need support and, like, a good role model and a good figure to attach to. They're doing it because, like, they need attention, and, like, all of a sudden mom's not here, and, like, whenever you see those kids, you just know when you meet the mom, it's like a mom was like, oh my gosh, honey, how are you? And like the kid could be 16 and like it's a little sad and like a little concerning. Like we just had a 14-year-old patient who like her mom came with her in the bathroom to like wipe her. Like that's debasing herself. That's not like supportive. Right. I feel like there might be a line there. I don't know how to reconcile that with the I commentaries, but like
I think that's a good distinction though.
And I think that falls in line with, I think that justifies what Hillel's doing. I don't think Hillel's debasing himself. I think Hillel very clearly knows what's going on, and like especially with his zinger at the end. And he's like, listen, you have actual questions. Like Judaism is about thinking and learning. Like we encourage questions here. That's what I'm here for. Like if that's what you want, I'm all for it. But like if like Shammai is like, and on the other hand, like someone asks like, okay, so what's wrong with all the other like people? Are like, I think no one's saying Shammai is a bad person. We just don't follow him because like whatever. Like we like what Hillel's doing and it falls in this mission, but like. He's justifying being like, no, like I see what you're doing. I'm not doing this. Get out of here.
Yeah. Okay. I definitely hear that argument. I think though that the one strike against it or one question I have is like debasing the way you're explaining it. The measure for debasing really has to go based on like, your own evaluation of the situation. But there is such a thing as objectively debasing, and going to the Nasi and make him get out of the shower to answer your questions about Africans' feet, like that's like objectively degrading, to like. So I'm still uncomfortable with that notion, Yeah,
I don't have an easy answer.
Yeah, Lauren.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I was thinking like maybe it depends like who's asking you, and I feel like with Hillel, he recognized that these were people that needed to become closer to Hashem.
Okay, right.
And he recognized that like if he didn't respond to them, that would distance them from Hashem, because I feel like not everybody understands that like his greatness. Like I feel like sometimes, like especially if people they didn't grow up in an Orthodox community, or if they're Baal Tshuva or on the way to being Baal Tshuva, they might not realize that like it's a really big deal to, let's say, like I don't know who it is, whatever, is like to go to Rav Schachter and like ask him a question. Like they don't know that that's like how great he is. Like I saw him in the airport one time. You know what I mean? So like me, I was like really nervous. like. But if you're just like new to Judaism and you see a rabbi, you might just like start a conversation and might have that same like, fear, I guess, or awe.
Right.
So I guess it's maybe like it's I guess in line with the Sforno, thinking about like how if you know that this, like you have to act with that based on how the person is, and if they're the type that doesn't know, then you need to maybe you do have to like debase yourself, I guess, because that's like will bring them closer to
Right.
God.
Okay. So I'm smiling because because I do have a story where I did this with Rav Schachter because I was new to Judaism, so I'll tell the story now, even though it's not necessary, but I feel like I want to tell it. So when I converted to Judaism in December of 2000. Okay. So in June of 2001, I went on NCSY Kollel. Okay. And so this is like, like essentially 6 months after I was Jewish. So I really didn't know, I was still like very new to stuff, and like, I didn't know the whole world of like YU and like that whole thing, and so like, I will remember when I got on the bus, I always, even to this day, sit at the front of the bus because I get motion sick in bus really, really quickly. So I was sitting in the front seat, and this guy with a beard sits next to me. This is not Rav Schachter, and like, we just started talking, and like I talked with him the whole bus ride, and like I think he knew that like I didn't know anybody. And then like I later on found out that was Rav Meir Torsky, and I was like so touched about the fact that like he like made me feel welcome and everything like that. So anyway, fast forward like a week or two, Rav Schachter comes, and everyone clearly treated Rav Schachter as like a big deal, but like I didn't know how big of a deal he was, and so like I guess I didn't get to know him very well, but it was enough that like I got his email address, and like I would email him questions from time to time. So my senior year, I think I emailed him a couple times, and then when I came to yeshiva here in my first year in yeshiva, I still didn't know the whole world of YU, and I still didn't really know how big he was. And so I remember that I had emailed him a question about changing a nusach of tefillah, and like he actually like photocopied like source sheets and like highlighted stuff and like sent them to me at yeshiva, which is like amazing. But again, I didn't know this. And then here's the story though. So then he was at one Shabbos, he spoke at the White Shul. Okay. And he spoke, and he said something which I, in my 18-year-old like yeshivish fire youth, I was like, what he's saying could be interpreted as kafira. So like as like it was a heretical thing. And I remember exactly what it was. Is he said that he was talking about the Taryag mitzvos, and he said that like something about how there's a correlation between the mitzvos being avenues of Yedias Hashem, and like each of the mitzvos is necessary as an avenue of Yedias Hashem. And he said something like that. And so I went home and I wrote this email saying like, Rav Schachter, like, because there's a machlokus about what it counts as Taryag mitzvos, then like implying that different mitzvos lead to different ideas about Hashem. Like, I guess I don't remember exactly what it was. I could dig up the email, but I in a very disrespectful way, like corrected him, and like, he responded in a very gracious manner. He said, like, you're right. Like, I shouldn't have said this. Like, it might have given people the wrong impression. Thank you for like pointing out to it. And then only a couple years later, I realized, oh my gosh, I can't believe like I like emailed Rav Schachter and like chastised him, and he was like so nice about it, So anyway, that's my Rav Schachter brazen story. Anyway, but going back to what you were saying, that I think that you're answering the question in the way that I was going to answer it as well, which is using the Sforno to answer the question for the Meiri and the Rambam, which is, yes, it's true that from an objective perspective, all things being equal, you shouldn't debase yourself. But if you know that this is what is necessary to bring this person closer to God, then that's what you're going to do. Because that was the Sforno's overriding message, is that like, you should do whatever it takes to bring people close to God. And look, we're talking about a chassid, and a chassid is going beyond the letter of the law. You cannot apply letters of the law to this thing. You have to be flexible in a way that suits the needs of the individual case, So I think it's not a stretch to say that like that Hillel saw from this person that like this was a good thing to do, And same thing in the I'm actually doing this sugya with one of my students on a goy, it's usher for a non-Jew to learn Torah, except under certain parameters. So there's a whole question of that guy who wanted to convert to be a Kohen Gadol. So the question is, according to some, then Hillel taught him Torah and then converted him. And according to others don't want to say that. they want to say, no, he converted him immediately. But then the question is, why would he convert him immediately based on like such a crazy reason to convert to Judaism? So the Baalei Tosfos say that, Hillel was certain that the guy was going to be L'Shem Shemayim. Like he was certain that even though he's asking this crazy thing now, he saw in this guy that this guy, as long as he keeps learning, that he's going to come close to God for the right reasons. So you see that Hillel like had this knowledge of these people and he was like making these decisions based on like individual calculations, So I think that's a good answer. There is another answer I can give, which is that, yes, it's true that you should be Kal L'Rosh and Noach L'Tishchores for the reasons we said. However, it's possible that Hillel was working on himself and saw that for his own sake, he needed to do this. And like I mentioned with the Rambam in the middle path, the Rambam holds you go all the way away from haughtiness to the side of humility. So let's say Hillel's showering and here's this guy saying, hey, Hillel, and let's say that brings up a feeling in Hillel where he says like, how dare anyone talk to me that way? Maybe in order to combat that haughtiness, Hillel had to go to the opposite extreme and totally like make himself submissive to this guy in order to work on his own mitos, and that would override these other concerns of Pirkei Avos, which is like, chassid stuff. This is like basic v'halachta b'drachav of like being humble, So and that's what how the Gemara introduces it. Maybe when it's saying the humility of Hillel does not just mean that you see he was humble because he didn't get upset, even though that's the pshat. Maybe it's that he was humble in the sense that he worked on himself to like craft and cultivate his humility, even though it was being tested by such a brazen guy, Yeah, Ayala?
Okay, I really like that idea. Okay. My question was, why, according to the Rambam, I guess, and the Meiri, why would you not want to degrade yourself? Is it because you're representing Torah? Or is there another reason?
Good question. Yeah, so why would you not want to degrade yourself? So again, Moshe Rabbeinu doesn't care about degrading himself, and someone who's humble wouldn't care. So I think that this is where I think that the societal thing comes in. You could say it's about the reputation of Torah, but I think given the framework of the Mishnah, it's that in order for maybe this Sforno really is like the premise of the Meiri and the Rambam. In order for society to work smoothly in a Torah way, these hierarchies have to be clear and it has to be like a well-oiled machine, where like people are looking up to the Talmidei Chachamim and like those who are inferior are serving the people who are like more perfected than them. And then everyone's going to learn from everyone and society is going to work well. And once you start like, blurring these lines, then you get real problems with that, So it might be for the sake of the society, not for the sake of like, for individual, he doesn't necessarily want kavod, but it's good for the functioning of the Jewish society for people to look up to the prominent individuals and for the prominent individuals to not let themselves be walked all over by the people who are beneath them. Yeah, Ayala?
So according to that, it would be better for, let's say, a great chacham to be like, if someone asks him, or a hedjo or whatever is asking him like an annoying question, even if like maybe for this guy it would be like it kind of bring him closer to Torah, for the society as a whole it would be better for the chacham to remain in his like high seat, so that people can view him as like a true Talmud chacham and separate.
So so you're asking about if there's like a conflict between these two considerations, like what's good for the guy and what's good for the society?
Yeah, because it seems like the Rambam's language, it seems like it was saying that like it doesn't really matter what's good for the guy. It's kind of about you, no?
Right. Yeah, it's a good question. That's the thing it's hard to say here, which is, these are, to what extent are these like guidelines that need to be applied given, as one factor of many, and how many of these are like hard and fast rules, I'm inclined to say what I said to explain Hillel's case, which is that these are general principles that you need to have at the forefront of your mind, but individual exceptions can and should be made when warranted, and I think so. I think that like in that case, like the chassid is going to have to like make a judgment call, like what is going to be better, like not stooping to the level, but like degrading himself in this way for the sake of this one guy to bring him closer to Torah, or like maintaining his image. I don't know, I'll read an example. Hold on, I've read this example before, but I'll read it again. So in the Rav Thinking Aloud, when he describes the difference between Rav Chaim Soloveitchik, the Rav's grandfather, and then the Rav himself, he says that Rav Chaim. So the interviewer says that the Rav, he says, you told me that Rav Chaim used to box with the Bachrim in the yeshiva, like boxing. And the Rav says, yes, he was like a pal of theirs, like he wasn't a Rosh Yeshiva. I couldn't do it. He wanted to be familiar, one of the Bachrim. And then the interviewer says, how did it work out? So the Rav says he liked it very much. He had no vanity in him like I have. He could joke about himself. Where many Rosh Yeshiva fail, they are concerned about appearances. They are on the other side, standing at the end. They are not one of the guys. They're the leader. Rav Chaim was just the opposite. He would walk with the Bachrim and play with them, So like, if you ask the Rav and Rav Chaim, like, what do you say about this Mishnah? It seems like Rav Chaim is violating this Mishnah, but maybe if you ask Rav Chaim, he would say like, yeah, because that's what the guys needed. The guys needed someone who would be one of them. And the Rav was like in a completely different position. He was a Rosh Yeshiva in America, like the head of this like modern American institution. Maybe he needed that. I don't know. I think these things have to be on a case-by-case basis. Tamar?
I have 2 points. One is just like an element that might be in this sort of, when you have this kind of distance, or even if it's not exactly distance, but when the Talmid Chacham is not extremely available.
Yeah.
Is that I do think it encourages a person to formulate their question carefully and to listen better to the answer. Also, that's
a good point.
Both those two elements.
So that serves the point of making them get closer to Hashem. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, like it could be beneficial to them, not just just in that way.
Yeah.
A separate question, which is like, I feel like there's this idea, maybe maybe a sort of reference here of like being mishamish a Rav, like you see like certain students serving their Torah mentor. I don't know exactly what to call it, And I don't know if that's what this is about, or you think it's a different thing.
I think this
is that part of this.
Yeah, that encompasses that. This encompasses that. And I think the Rambam did use the word to be mishamish then. Yeah. The Amud Lefan of Lashamsho, Kasher Yirtze. Yeah. And that's part of Kabbat HaRav. Yeah. Yeah. And I think this would apply to that. But it's not limited to that, because it seems to be anyone who's a gadol, and not just a Talmid Chacham.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. I just want to really quickly read one more in case it brings out a different idea. This is Rav Hirsch, and then we'll wrap it up for tonight. So Rav Hirsch says, Rosh here denotes a person who occupies the position of head of leadership in an organization or in any endeavor. So this is not a Rosh on an objective scale of like Chachma or like righteousness. This is like the head of an organization, even if they're below you. Okay. Kal, literally easy to be led, amenable. Noach is quiet or cautious, and Tishchoris is youth, the morning of life, as in Merachim HaShachar and Hayaldus VaShacharus. When dealing with a person entrusted with the leadership of an assembly, a group, or community to which you belong, be amenable. Do not be difficult, submit to his direction, and do not regard this submission as a loss of face. But when you deal with the inexperienced young, be cautious. Give ample thought to the matter at hand before making your decision. However, once you find that what they seek to achieve is good, then join them in their endeavors, even though they are younger than you. When other men offer you their help in your own endeavors, accept them cheerfully. Do not be led by pride to seek to do everything by yourself. Do not reject anyone from the outset. Instead, receive everyone gladly, and then consider whether or not he is suitable for you and your endeavors. All these 3 verses urge that you selflessly ignore personal factors in favor of pure devotion to the cause you seek to serve. Okay, so I thought that was a really interesting application, that this is about how you relate to people who have these positions within the organization, even if you're greater than them. Yeah, Vanessa?
I really like this. Just like, it just appeals to me. I work in healthcare. You have to do a lot, and also like secular healthcare. So it's a lot of like, it's not often like Torah leaders. It's often people who are like above you, but also like may not be like their mido wise or like whatever, like people you want to look down on, even though that's not like appropriate, and like being able to like humble yourself and be like, no, this is a person who's in a position of authority and you do need to like, this just, I don't know, I like it.
Yeah, I like it too.
Excited by it.
I heard a really good example of this. So on the podcast Judaism Demystified, they recently interviewed Imu Shalev, who is one of the guys who works at Aleph Beta at Rabbi Foreman's website. So he was talking on a very good podcast, and he was talking about his work relationship with Rabbi Foreman, and he was saying how like there's a healthy tension. On the one hand, Rabbi Foreman is not, tech savvy in the same sense that Imu is, and he said that Rabbi Foreman is just like very like he sees the vision of like these younger people and is totally willing to like go and like submit himself, how he says, submit to their direction and not regarding that as a loss of faith. Okay. On the other hand, Rabbi Foreman and Imu have different views for what the purpose of Aleph Beta is. Rabbi Foreman, so he said, Imu says that he said, I want to change the world. And like Rabbi Foreman just wants to like learn and teach Torah. And like I think that there should be like marketing that is like we should like try to like make this appeal to everyone. Rabbi Foreman says, no, just let the ideas speak for themselves. And he was saying how like Rabbi Foreman also doesn't just give in to the youthful vision, just like recklessly. So I thought it was just an interesting example of how these factors play out. I don't really have much more to say on this right now, though. Okay, so let's just summarize what we have here. Yeah, Ayala.
I also think it's interesting how he's taking the last phrase, like unlike the other ones who are taking it as like a part of the first two or whatever.
Yeah.
It seems like he's saying it's a different idea of like when people are coming to help you, then
right.
Like
let me read that again. I don't think I paid attention when I was reading. When other men offer you their help in your own endeavors, accept them cheerfully. I guess he's taking makabel in a more literal sense, not because makabel can be a synonym of like to greet, but he's saying it as like to receive them. Do not be led by pride to seek to do everything by yourself. Do not reject anyone from the outset. Instead, receive everyone gladly and then consider whether or not he's suitable for your endeavors. Yeah, that is an important thing also, is like if you respond to the fact that they want to help, that will tend to lead to a better work relationship than if you just say, well, do they have something to offer me? And if not, then I'm not even going to like entertain them. Like that's treating them like a function, not like a person who wants to help, Okay, so what do we get from this mishnah? I'm not going to go through and answer all the questions, but so we actually, it turns out no one said pleasant, right? Everyone said deliberate. So according to the Rambam, and so the favorite idea, I'll start with the favorite idea. My favorite idea is the Sforno, who says that we exist in social hierarchies, and it can be very tempting to get caught up into the hierarchy or to the social standing as an end in and of itself. So, but instead of doing that, you should view everything as a means of reinforcing your service to God. So with a king, don't just get enamored with the king's kavod and be like, oh, I got to honor the king. Use him as a model of a kavod for how you relate to God. With someone who's beneath you, don't just, you should not, well, you certainly shouldn't get caught up in your own kavod, even though he doesn't say that, but you shouldn't become overly familiar with them because that's going to impair their ability to learn from you. And you should maintain healthy boundaries. And with all other people, you should greet them cheerfully because that's going to bring them closer to God. So all human interactions should be used as vehicles of bringing everyone, including yourself, closer to God. We had the idea of the Rambam and the Meiri about maintaining this, like Tamar said, like almost like a binary social hierarchy of if anyone is a little bit higher than you, then make yourself call to serve them. And if they're a little bit lower than you, then hold yourself and don't be just too quick to let them walk all over you or use you however they want, because that's going to dilute your social position. But at the same time, you should reject them pleasantly. And when you do give in to them, then you should give in to them pleasantly because that is going to, you don't want to alienate them or like make them feel bad or like, certainly not create a chil Hashem or anything like that. And then we have Rav Hirsch's idea about how you relate to people in an organization who are heads of organizations or when they're offering their help or when you're helping them. I think I reached the end of my own attention span and energy level tonight. So there might be more to say, but I am done. And even if you ask me to continue, I'm going to politely refuse because I got to take care of my own needs here. Okay, nice thing in Pirkei Avos. And I want to flag this just as like, let's keep an eye on like, I feel like this is a new category of idea in Pirkei Avos, and I just don't know what to make of it. Like, it does not feel like the same kind. The other ones felt more like philosophical ideas. This one is more practical still. I don't know if that's significant. I just wanted to note that. Okay, thanks for coming. Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.